Dispatch number 2. The view from here. It's easy to lose track of time when traveling through space. Long gone are the days of rising with the sun or falling asleep beneath the glow of the moon. The view from here, far away from Earth, beyond the chaos of the Milky Way, is unlike anything the crew has seen before.
Who stole my last Gatorade?
Asked Commander Vaughn, rifling through the fridge in the galley. Faint chuckles echoed through the room. It could have been any of the 5,000 recruits aboard the spaceship. It could have been Commander Sean on a midnight prowl, determined to quench his thirst, or mission specialists JB and Snazzy, playing a cruel game of hide-and-seek. It could have been Flight Engineer Reimer or Payload Specialist Risk. It could have been anyone at any time, because when supplies dwindle, mischief arrives.
You drank it last night,
said Reimer, releasing steam from a bag of popcorn.
Don't you remember?
Commander Vaughn didn't remember much about last night. It was a bit of a blur, just as everything had been since the voyage began.
It's possible,
he said, shoulders deep in the belly of the fridge.
Nah, but I doubt I'd forget something like that.
As much of the popcorn in Reimer's hands smelled and felt like popcorn, it didn't taste the way he remembered. Nothing did. Space food had certainly evolved since the days of John Glenn, the first American to eat in space aboard Friendship 7. And because of that, Reimer was grateful for not having to live off applesauce, sugar tablets, or tubes of pureed beef and vegetables. The food on board was slightly off, but he could live with that. What Reimer couldn't live with was Commander Vaughn's fleeting memory and how quickly he kept forgetting the mission's dire state. It was as if he was oblivious to everything the crew had endured. It had only been a month or so since the team boarded the vessel, an artifact created by an international faction tethered to the government of the United States of America. Since liftoff, the team had lost communication with Earth. The spaceship's speed accelerators swiftly fizzled the moment they reached the outer arm of the Milky Way, and food supplies were getting scarcer by the day.
You keep forgetting that we're practically lost in space, floating to who knows where without a functioning navigation system,
said Reimer, shoveling a handful of popcorn into his mouth.
It's not your fault that the government decided to cut corners and gave up building this ride.
The crew knew that there were risks when they accepted the mission. ST-2M was an untested intergalactic spaceship that had been worked on in secret since the 1970s. When funds dried up in 2008 due to a wide-scale economic collapse, so did the government's daydreams of extended space travel. For nearly 13 years, ST-2M remained tucked away at a classified military base in the heart of Alaska, where it patiently waited for the day it would become a priority once again. From a bird's-eye view, the base looked lifeless. Nothing more than 24 white satellites in the middle of a valley surrounded by mountains. A single dirt road cut through the wilderness like a long scar running alongside the satellite field to the base of a small silver shed. Very few knew how to open the shed and flip the breaker in the electrical panel, knowledge which granted access to the network of tunnels connecting large hangars, research laboratories, and a high-security command center sprawling beneath the Earth's surface. It was there, deep underground, where Commanders Vaughn and Sean worked in secret.
Do you ever wonder what would have happened had you and Sean not taken the airwaves that night?
Asked Reimer. Vaughn didn't like to think about that critical moment, a time when they broadcasted their conversation into deep space. The jury was still out on whether the duo accidentally went live or if curiosity got the best of them. As they were flying solo in the command center, speculation among the recruits swung either way.
I mean, we're here now,
said Vaughn, closing the fridge.
What's the point of dwelling on the past when we can't change it?
Reimer rubbed his buttery fingernails on his navy coveralls.
I'm just saying, you and Sean are heroes. Had it not been for your broadcast, you wouldn't have freaked out and messed with the satellites or fiddled with the algorithms. How long have you and Sean been sitting in that room, going over incoming signals, looking for evidence of alien communication? You guys hit the motherlode, my friend.
Commanders Vaughn and Sean had been stationed at the base for nearly 6 years. 6 years too long. Vaughn had dreams of working at the International Space Station, playing guitar while in orbit. Sean was obsessed with Neil Armstrong, his childhood hero, and wanted to follow in the footsteps of his idol by leaving his own on the moon. While being stationed at a secret base in Alaska was intriguing, it was far from ideal. Bases like this were rumored to be the places where flightless commanders go to retire. For these two young commanders, it was the government's way of keeping them away from anything they could potentially destroy, which was pretty much everything.
True,
Said Vaughn.
It really makes you wonder if the government knew about Nifty and the Legion of Wen this whole time.
I know it doesn't feel like it, but there's really no one else best suited to lead this mission.
Said Reimer.
Especially right now when it seems like everything that could possibly go wrong has happened. Minus crashing into an asteroid or being struck by a wayward comet or... Yeah, I guess it could be worse. But I mean, who even knows where we are or where Nifty is? And the worst part is, we're now out of popcorn.
Vaughn and Sean knew that the transmission they intercepted wasn't the first of its kind. The government had been receiving variations for years, monitoring plasma waves and searching for encrypted messages from extraterrestrials. Cracking the code was the challenge. It's one thing to have a transmission, and it's another to be able to understand it. Nifty was a breakthrough. The fierceness in his voice, so dark and guttural, made the hairs on the back of Commander Sean's neck stand up. When world leaders began arriving at the base, Sean and Vaughn went under heavy rounds of interrogation. Rumors spread like wildfire about what they had discovered and why the world's leaders suddenly cared about a base many assumed they had abandoned. While various factions rarely agreed on much, it was unanimous that Nifty was a force that had to be stopped. If not for Simia, a moon neither Sean nor Vaughn had previously heard of, then for Earth. Fragile, helpless Earth. How to stop Nifty was a larger, more ambiguous question. Who would step forward to embark on a one-way mission? Which commanders could unite thousands of people they've never worked alongside before and carry them through the most harrowing experiences of their lives?
Vaughn! Where's Vaughn?
Yelled JB, rushing into the galley.
He just stepped into the pantry.
Said Reimer, eyeing a chocolate bar.
Think he's a little hangry.
Sean needs him on the bridge. Stat!
The day the comms died on the spaceship was the day JB and Snazzy realized just how large the vessel was. Not being able to quickly connect through communicators made everything more difficult. Vaughn was a creature of habit, and if he wasn't in the game room, he'd most likely be in the galley.
What's going on?
Asked Vaughn, stepping out of the pantry with a raspberry jam sandwich in his hand. JB scanned the room. There were too many recruits around to tell Vaughn what was happening on the bridge. Even though JB didn't know what prompted the panic, the fear in Commander Sean's voice was enough to make him trust that not all was well. Sounding a premature alarm would send a shockwave of chaos through the ship. That wasn't something JB wasn't willing to do until Sean or Vaughn commanded it.
Not here.
Said JB quietly.
We need to get to the bridge.
Reimer straightened up. He could tell by the seriousness in JB's voice that whatever was happening on the bridge was something that could not be taken lightly.
Arcaded!
Said Vaughn, eyeing Reimer.
If Sean's pulling a fast one and interrupting my lunchtime for kicks, I'm going to have a talk with that fish.
Commander Sean was speaking with Risk and Snazzy when JB, Reimer, and Vaughn barged into the bridge. The officers in the room fixed at their stations seemed overly tense and panicked. They were scared. Far more scared than they had been when the communication system and speed accelerators failed.
Did someone die?
Asked Vaughn.
We have a situation,
Said Sean. Snazzy sniffled as she wiped the tears from her eyes. She could feel the difference in the way the spaceship was behaving. It was as if they had traveled too close to some large mass and were caught in its gravitational pull. The movements of the ship, although subtle, didn't feel like the movements the team had come to know. There was resistance against any change in course. As much as Snazzy wanted to be wrong, she knew deep down that what was happening didn't feel right.
What do you mean?
Said Vaughn, scanning the emptiness.
There's nothing out there. I mean, seriously, look, there's nothing. Tell me you didn't disturb my moment with my jam Sammy for this.
Risk and JB, can you each take a level and urge the recruits to lock in?
Said Sean.
Snazzy's right. There's something strange happening here. It feels off. Even though we can't pinpoint what it is, we need to protect our crew as best as we can. This is far worse than I thought, and it may get ugly. Fast.
Copy that.
Said JB, rushing out of the bridge with Risk close behind. Reimer sat at his station and zoomed in on what was before them. He searched for anomalies, patterns in the stars, anything that could potentially indicate that what they were seeing wasn't really there. Or worse, evidence that something was there. Reimer learned early on that the rules change with the game, and to know the rules, he must understand the game he's playing. With space, one can never assume that human logic applies. Space and life within it colors outside the lines.
Vaughn, Sean, you have to look at this.
Yelled Reimer.
Two of the patterns look like they're mirrored, as if they're reflecting another part of the galaxy. Whatever is doing this, we're headed straight for it.
Just then, the lights in the bridge darkened, and the emergency lights flicked on. The spaceship's internal collision warning system wailed.
Hey, look at that.
Said Vaughn.
The emergency system works. That's a W.
Sean glared at Vaughn. This wasn't the time for jokes. This was serious. And if the alarm reached every corner of the spaceship, it could save lives.
We need to lock in now,
said Snazzy, sitting at her station.
Commanders, get yourselves seated. This could be a bumpy ride.
Snazzy, any regrets?
Asked Reimer, trying to focus on something other than near certain death.
Nada. Carpe diem all day, every day. But now's not really the time to chat about missed opportunities. This mission potentially being one of them. We don't come out of it alive.
Oh, shit!
Yelled Sean.
Where did that planet come from?
The pull is too strong,
said Reimer as the ship picked up speed.
I can't break away.
The entire vessel shook wildly as if it were a toy in a child's hand.
We're going to barrel roll if we don't get this situation under control,
hollered Sean. It was too late. ST-2M was rapidly descending toward the planet, spinning around and around like a pinwheel free-falling toward the ground.
Ugh, I think I'm going to be sick,
said Snazzy.
Not in my direction, please,
said Reimer.
Turn your head towards Vaughn.
JB had only made it to the second level before finding a safe place to hide with several officers.
It's going to be okay,
he said, reassuring the recruits.
Everything will be fine. Just some unfortunate turbulence.
There were bad lies and good lies. At this very moment, JB didn't know whether it was the best to tell the recruits that they had encountered something unprecedented, or if it was best to shrug it off as just another rough ride in space. Everything they had experienced up to this point had been new. One of the benefits of being early was that discoveries were bountiful, but with so many unknowns, it was easy to get wrecked. Given the territory they were in and the mission they were on, room for error was limitless.
Reimer, is there anything that we can do to unload to even us a little bit out?
Asked Sean.
We're going to crash into this planet hard if we don't slow down.
Empty the hangar!
Yelled Vaughn.
That's where most of our weight is right now. Dump it! All of it!
It was a gamble. This whole mission was a gamble. And if there was anything that could stop ST-2M from total annihilation upon impact, it was shedding dead weight.
I'll give it a shot,
said Reimer.
What do we have to lose?
Just our lives,
quipped Snazzy. Everything happened so fast that the crew didn't have time to realize that what they had sailed into was a protective netting. A double-layered honeycomb shield that kept the hidden planet alive. The chances of discovering something like this seemed incredibly thin, and yet here they were, crashing toward a world that wanted to keep its existence unknown. But why? And from whom?
Aim for the desert!
Yelled Sean.
If we can lift slightly up the nose, we can try to cushion the impact.
I can't change our course,
said Reimer.
Whatever's down there is pulling us to where it wants to go. It's like it wants us to crash.
Wait, do you see that?
Said Vaughn, trying to focus on the surface. Whether the crew liked it or not, S2TM was headed toward a graveyard of spaceships. Hundreds of vessels scattered across the raw desert, covered by the sands of time. All Sean and Vaughn could focus on was the destination. That this wasteland of debris would be where the crew and every recruit would be laid to rest.
Oh yeah,
Yelled Reimer.
we're lightening the load. Can you feel that? We're getting some of our power back.
Drop the evacuation pods.
Drain our water supply.
Just dump it all.
Far away from the rest of the crew, stuck inside an airlock outside of the hangar, Risk watched everything the crew brought with them from home tumble into space.
We're gonna make it.
He mumbled.
We're gonna make it.
Risk closed his eyes and took a final deep breath. He ran his list of goodbyes through his head. A few seconds before, ST-2M slammed into the desert and the ship's hull shattered like glass. Risk's body suspended in the calm before the crash. For the first time in his life, he truly felt like he was flying.